Before the empire, before the Senate, before the roar of conquest, there was Rome, still learning to define herself. A world in transition, where myth shaped men and men shaped destiny. Here, the law was not yet written. It was lived, breathed, and fought for. This was the pre-classic revolution, where civilization began to understand the divine architecture of order. Welcome to Imhotep Nexus Mindspace, where intellect finds order and history finds its voice.
You think you know the story of ancient Rome, right? The legions, the emperors, the Colosseum. But today, we're diving into a period that often gets skipped over, what we call the pre-classical revolution. And believe me, this was a time of such massive, radical change that it literally remade Roman civilization from the ground up. We're talking everything from their money and culture to the very idea of what law is. But this whole story, this entire revolution, really starts with just one question. How can one single event, just one battle, set off a chain reaction so huge that it completely changes who a people are, how they act, and how they see their place in the world? Well, to figure that out, we've got to go back to one single game-changing moment. So let's jump back to 22 BC. The Punic Wars, this long, brutal struggle between Rome and its arch-rival Carthage, are finally coming to an end. At the Battle of Zama, Rome crushes Carthage. It's a massive victory for sure, but the real story isn't about what ended that day, it's about what was just getting started. This moment right here is the dawn of Rome's pre-classical era, and calling it a revolution is not an exaggeration. This victory was so transformative, it basically put Rome on a completely new path, a path that would change everything. So what was the first big domino to fall? Well, it's this. For the very first time, Rome had total, undisputed control over the Mediterranean Sea. They even started calling it Mare Nostrum, which means our sea. Gaining control of this incredible highway of trade and travel was the spark that lit the fuse of a revolutionary chain reaction. And that leads us to the first huge transformation, and it's a deep one. It's a fundamental shift in the actual identity of the Roman people. The sociologist Max Weber just nailed it with this quote. The Romans were farmers, they became sailors. Now, this isn't just about changing jobs, right? This is a profound anthropological shift. It's about changing their entire relationship with the world around them. Let's break this down a bit. Before this big victory, archaic Rome was pretty much a closed society. It was inward-looking, based almost entirely on farming and local trade. But after they took control of the sea, pre-classical Rome became an open society, a budding global power with a booming trade economy driven by international commerce. The entire foundation of their world just shifted. Now, this new globalized economy didn't just bring in shiploads of grain and money. It brought in the world. For the first time, Rome was forced to open itself up to foreign cultures, new ideas, and different people on a massive scale. You get this massive contamination of cultures. And that word sounds negative, but it's not meant to be. It just means that all these new philosophies, new ethics, new kinds of art, they all flooded into the city. They started mixing with traditional Roman culture and changing it forever. Rome was no longer just some town in Italy. It was on its way to becoming a true cosmopolitan hub. And this is just perfectly captured by the poet Horace. He famously wrote that after Rome conquered Greece with its armies, conquered Greece, conquered her savage victor. By savage victor, he meant the Romans, tough, pragmatic, masters of war, but maybe not the most culturally sophisticated. It was Greek philosophy, Greek art, and Greek literature that really shaped and civilized Rome from the inside out. Okay, so picture this. Your economy has completely changed. Your entire culture is transforming. What's the one thing that's got to change next? Yep, the law. The old legal system, designed for a simple society of farmers, was just not going to cut it anymore. Roman law itself had to have a revolution. The first change? A massive explosion in richness. The simple laws of old Rome were basically useless for dealing with things like international shipping contracts or big business partnerships. The law had to rapidly invent a whole new toolbox to handle the demands of this complex new economy. Second, the law had to open up. The old law, the Ius Civile, only applied to Roman citizens. But what do you do when a Roman merchant gets into a dispute with, say, a Greek sailor? The answer was to develop the Jus Gentium, or the law of peoples. This was a whole new body of law designed to apply to everybody, Romans and foreigners alike. You absolutely need something like this if you're going to be a global trading power. And finally, Roman law had to get flexible, and I mean really flexible. Archaic law was all about rigid rituals. You had to say the exact magic words, perform the exact gestures, or your contract was void. That's fine for farmers trading sheep, but it's a nightmare for international business. So this old system was replaced by something called consensualism, a radical idea that a simple agreement, just a meeting of minds, could be legally binding. This shift gave birth to the 4 great contracts that are still the bedrock of commerce today: sale, lease, mandate, and partnership. So you might be wondering, how on earth did the Romans pull this off so fast and so effectively? I mean, changing your whole legal system. Well, the answer is one of the most brilliant and innovative legal inventions in all of history, the Praetor's Edict. So let's start with the problem. Put yourself in their shoes. Imagine someone tricks you into a bad contract. You promise to pay a ton of money for something that turns out to be totally worthless. Under the old As Jus Civile, a promise was a promise. There was literally no law against fraud, so you were stuck. The law was just too rigid to deal with this new kind of unfairness. The solution was the Praetor's Edict. The Praetor was the top magistrate in charge of the justice system. And every year, when a new one took office, he would publish an edict. You can think of it like his policy platform for the year. It basically outlined all the situations where he would promise to grant a legal remedy, like a lawsuit or a legal defense. Now, here is the absolute genius of this. The Praetor didn't write a new law that said fraud is illegal. That would be too slow. Instead, his edict would promise something like this: if it looks like someone was deceived in a contract, I will grant them an exception. An exception was a legal defense. So when the guy who scammed you sues you to pay up, the Praetor gives you this new tool to defend yourself in court and win. See what happened? By offering a remedy, he indirectly created a whole new legal principle. Fraud doesn't hold up in court. It's brilliant. Okay, so why are we getting so deep into some ancient Roman legal trick? Because this method, this way of thinking about law, wasn't just some clever workaround for them. It has had a massive, lasting impact on the world, right down to today. This whole remedial approach, the idea that you create rights by first offering a legal fix or a remedy, is the very foundation of the common law tradition. You know, the legal system used in countries like the United States, the UK, Canada, Australia. The idea that justice grows from courts providing solutions instead of just from a dusty book of rules is a direct inheritance from that Roman praetor. And this really leaves us with a huge, fundamental question about justice itself, doesn't it? What's more just? A law that's written in stone, unchanging and rigid, or a law that can bend, adapt, and evolve to protect people from new kinds of unfairness? The Romans, in their revolutionary moment, gave us their answer, and we are still living with that legacy today.
Every civilization carries its awakening. Rome's began here, in the quiet before the empire's thunder. As one chapter closes, another begins. Continue your journey with us. If you find this lesson interesting, don't forget to subscribe, like and share your opinion in the comments sections. This is Imhotep Nexus Mindspace, where every idea builds the nexus.